the beginning, my late arrival, I mentioned the word land acknowledgement. And there's a trend for land acknowledgement. I think hopefully it's not a fad, like fads come and go, but a trend that becomes a part of your legacy for the future generations, because it was an acknowledgement of those that came before us and their teachings to always give credit and always remember as a guide, and to bring that knowledge forward into this current time. And land acknowledgement is more than about recognizing those who came before you. It's also about keeping that knowledge in the present and passing it on to the future so that it doesn't get lost. And when I talk about my beloved Everglades, the kidneys of the earth, we just heard about the heart of the earth. In the way that we understand it, the earth itself. And I hope you think about this when you leave here today and the different actions you take in the future and the decisions that you make and how your relationship is with the earth. And coming from a place of healing and how we need to heal this climate, heal Mother Earth. I know people like to use the word restoration, but you can restore and not heal. So we coming from a place of healing and descended from healers, because most indigenous communities are healers in their way and their connection, is that my understanding of the earth is that we are the two-legged manifestation of Mother Earth itself. Everything that the earth has, we have. And when you look at the earth itself, it has a heart, it has the kidneys, like the Everglades, but also inside the earth, it has its blood, the oil that gets extracted. And what happens when they take your blood? You're gonna die from loss of blood. You have the waters, just like in your body, in your cells. You have the waters of the earth. You have the hair of the earth, the grass. You have the trees that provide that protective cover, just like your skin provides the protective cover of you. So everything that you embody is the earth. And when we speak of our Everglades, I always think of one of our tribal members puts it so eloquently, is that for us, we still practice that. The traditional form of laying our loved ones to rest. Not in a casket, in a concrete box, but to the earth itself, because from the earth you came and to the earth you shall return. So the Everglades, we always say that she is our relative. The tree is our relative, the water is our relative, the sky is our relative. Because when we put our loved ones to rest, we return to the earth. And where our loved ones were, where our grandfathers were, where our mother was, where our uncle was, there's a tree. There may be an island that formed around it. So our DNA is in the earth. It's not just a catchphrase we like to say, but our DNA is in the earth. We came from the earth and we return to the earth. And that's how we have that kinship. And we understand that just like the earth, to stay in its shape, every little thing has to work together. Everything, whether it's the water, whether it's the sand, whether it's the tree and its roots and the plants that hold those islands together. And when you look at our beaches and you think of that one little tiny grain of sand, one little grain of sand, what can it do all by itself? How is that little grain of sand so powerful? But when you take all those grains of sands that make up these beaches that holds the structure together, everything has to work together with that balance. So when I think of the earth and when I think of the conversations had here in the climate crisis, the changing climate, because some people don't like to say climate change, so I say changing climate because apparently they can swallow it better and make it more palatable. And just like food, right? When they were to eat it, it has to taste good. So when we talk about a changing climate, because it is changing, as we grow older, the earth grows older, and it goes through its changes. But when we think about that, when I think about it, it reminds me of what one of my uncles said. And it's a story that we always remind our children and ourselves as adults, is that wherever you go in life, someone else is going to cross your footstep. And you always have to be mindful what footstep you leave behind for others to cross and to follow. And that's very important, because each and every one of you in this room are going to walk somewhere, and you're going to walk with an intention. You can walk with a good intention, or you can walk with a bad intention. So what type of footsteps do you want to leave behind for the future generations in your life? In your life is your work, in your home, and how you impact the earth as a whole. Because when you get up in the morning, you impact something, someone. And too often times we have some people say, well, it's okay if I do this because I'm not hurting anybody. But the moment you wake up, you impact something. And science proves that. When you walk through the air, you can measure that now with data. When you swim in the water, you can measure that with data. When you play music to the water, you can measure that with data. Everything is measurable using the sciences, so you impact something. So what type of footsteps do you want to leave behind for the next generations, the future generations to walk and to cross? Because they will pick up that energy you left behind and those memories you left behind. So I want you to think of that, because as institutions, educators, parents, mothers, daughters, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, friends, significant others, how together, like that grain of sand, can you work together to help Mother Earth? And thinking of that, working in your respective positions, if you're an educator, you're a financier, or you're someone that's a philanthropist, how can you do your part with the responsibility you have to make that change? Because as we heard earlier, we're at that point that once we cross over, there's no return. But how can we celebrate the fact and help each other not get past the point of no return? Because it is possible. And nature is the best educator you can have. COVID taught a lot of lessons. COVID taught us without the two-legged animal that calls himself a human being roaming freely and removed out of nature, nature started healing itself. And there's data that shows air quality improved. Pollutants into nature itself got reduced. But once the two-legged animals started roaming again, we started seeing the impacts again. And one of the things that I like to call myself, because it reminds me, and it's my understanding of what I am, I'm a natural being in a natural world. And as an educator, I see that when the two-legged animal calls themselves a human being, they divorce themselves from the natural world. Nature is here, and the human being is here. But when we say natural being in a natural world, where are we together? And that comes back to, can't speak for every tribe, but for my people, the Miccosukee, and I'm descendant of the Seminoles and the Creek, is that we talk about the circle of life. It all has to work together. And everyone in this room, I think over the last few days, I've heard about how we can work together to help this changing climate and this climate crisis. How can we be better natural beings in a natural world? How can we change our buildings so that we're using less? What's to say that we can't have more classrooms without the walls? Because nature is a classroom. There's nothing that dictates that you shall have a classroom inside of a wall. You learn wherever you go. You're an educator wherever you go. There's always teaching and learning opportunities wherever you go. So when you're having those conversations, and I heard someone say it in one of the breakout sessions, which is true, is that sometimes you have to have difference of opinions and understandings to come to a solution, but to come to that solution together. And I remember, and it always stuck with me, there's a tribal member, and we were talking about division and exclusion. And she made a statement. You know, when a hurricane comes, it doesn't care what kind of car you drive. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care in what kind of house you live in. When a hurricane comes, it makes everybody the same. It impacts everybody. It doesn't care. It just comes with its devastation. So nature is a good teacher. And that hurricane doesn't see that you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent. It doesn't care. Nature treats everyone the same. And I always say nature is the only thing that would accept you as you are. It doesn't judge you. It accepts you as you are. So nature is a good teacher to see how we need to be as natural beings in a natural world with each other. Because if we're thinking that we're all together as a we, we're all the same, because we're the two-legged manifestation of Mother Earth, we'll find ways to heal nature. If we will get there together, because we have to get there together. Because we're all, once we pass that point of no return, we're all going to pay together those consequences. It doesn't matter, you know, what we wear, what language we speak, where we live. We are all going to pay for it together. So if we're going to pay for it together, then maybe we should pay for it together to come to those solutions, to have a good outcome, to invest together, whether if it's our time, our knowledge, our resources, but how can we work? Especially the universities. They have the prime opportunity, and I believe a responsibility, to give all their students those tools to get there together, to be those future innovators, to help find those solutions, to be those educators, to go out and educate, to be that example in the communities of how we can get there together, how we can include more of the voices together, to provide those opportunities to their students together. And I've heard some of that in some of the presentations of how there are universities thinking that way and bringing in their communities and being a part of their community and their partnerships to include those voices. But we can do better, because we can always do better. We're always learning. We don't know everything. My people say the day you know everything is the day you die. So I'm still learning. I'm not in a hurry, to know everything. And thinking of those things, and I hear the word economy, and I'm going to read something. It is not to make anyone feel bad, but to also think when we talk about economic prosperity, and when we talk about economic change and equity. So I'm going to read something that I had posted about a month ago, because I was reading a book I love to read, and it really stood out to me because of what I've always understood, but actually what was a kind of a policy. And it reminded me of an environmental engineer I know, of a statement he made that talks about economy. And we were in a meeting with a mayor, because we were trying to stop a project that would destroy the environment more here in Florida. And I remember him saying to the mayor, economy, mayor, that us not having this project will help the economy of your town. And he said economy is about taking care of home. Is the original definition of economy, not the way we use economy now, but economy is taking care of home. And we heard that in the presentation about the Amazon, taking care of home, Mother Earth. And I came across a statement in this book that I read, and it was a quote. Put my glasses on here. It's a quote from the 1960 Economic Journal. Economic development of an underdeveloped people by themselves is not compatible with the maintenance of their traditional customs and morals. A break with the latter is prerequisite to economic progress. What is needed is a revolution in the totality of social, cultural, and religious institutions and habits, and thus in their psychological attitude, their philosophy and way of life. Unhappiness and discontentment and the sense of wanting more than is obtainable at any moment is to be generated. The suffering and dislocation that may be caused in the process may be objectionable, but it appears to be the price that has to be paid for economic development, the condition of economic progress. So reading that is the reason why we're in a climate crisis. It's the reason for why we're talking about climate change. So understanding that, how can we change that statement? How can we change that statement to be about prosperity, thriving traditions and cultures, and understanding that a people will go extinct if you don't have those traditions and cultures that is tied to how you connect with the land. That is my goal for you, is to change that statement and return economy to taking care of home. Thank you.